At that stage of life, I blamed my father for a lot of what I perceived to be problems in my life. It was all his fault. If my father had been nicer to me, if my father hadn't been so strict, if my father hadn't done this, if I'd been brought up differently, then I wouldn't be blah, blah, blah. I was in a very strong blame game situation in my late 20s. Yeah. So there was one line in that book that said, parents do the best they can with the skills and knowledge they have at the time. Yeah. And that one line created this epiphany for me that all of a sudden all of that blame, it was overnight, disappeared and dissipated, and I realised at that point I'm an adult now, I'm responsible for my life.
Yeah.
You can't hate someone whose story you know. And I have interpreted that over the years, and certainly getting to know lots of people, mainly professionally in the early stages, but I apply that to everybody and everything these days. So get to know the story.
Gotcha.
Get to know what the circumstances are. And when we talk about fostering, our kids are in foster care for a reason. Yeah. And it's usually something that's dysfunctional on several levels.
Yeah.
Understand the story.
Yeah.
You start to understand what might be influencing the patterns that have been created in that child.
How does Neville make you a better person?
By giving me the space to be who I truly am.
Wow.
And loving me.
Wow. You know, I regard that as one of the great acts of love. Mm-hmm. In my limited experiences of what love is, it is the ability to give the other the space to be themselves and not to ask them to be the person that they need you to be.
Who I am now is a result of me being responsible for me, not what other people do to me. I'm in charge of my life.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my dear listeners, guess what? You are here with A Journey with Bernie. Neville Stone, you're my guest. Justine Baker, you're my guest. But Neville, you're a regular on A Journey with Bernie, a regular listener.
Certainly.
I'm asking right up front, tell me why, please. I love having a regular listener on the podcast today.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Look, I have found inspiration in some of the stories of various individuals you have. And I always look for something positive and how other people express love and kindness and put value into their own communities, into their own lives and the people they affect. And some of the weirdos that you've had on there, myself included.
Excuse me. I'm not going to even mention names there in case they have an inference that they're one of the weirdos.
Oh, look, I'm sure some of them would probably accept that they are because there's a lot of them are stepping outside what most people would term normal.
I tell you what is interesting, a lot of them at the end of the podcast have said to me privately, oh, Bernie, I almost found that therapeutic. I found some real value in you made me think about certain things I hadn't thought about before. Hey, dear people, you've got a little bit of a taste of Justine Baker and Neville Stone. What they haven't told you is what this podcast is about or what their story is about. We're going to come to that very, very shortly because I need to thank you, dear listeners. We have been asking for a couple of of weeks now for you to press the followship button or the become a strong supporter of the podcast. And this is so essential. Chip not so long ago spoke about the algorithms of these podcasting platforms, and the more and more followship, the more and more subscribers we have, it elevates the podcast to a level where if anybody goes looking for a particular type of podcast on love, happiness and meaning, then the Journey with Bernie is going to come to the top of the pile. So your followship and your subscribership, I just made that word up, is just so absolutely vital. And I thank you, because it's become obvious in a few weeks. Guess what? Some of you have been pressing the button and you've been turning the lights on for us. And we're so thankful. And I'm thankful because touching 50 countries and around about 6,000 listeners per episode, then we're getting a lot of people now starting to hear the stories that Neville was just referring to. And you heard it from Neville. He's a listener, and he said that so many of them provide inspiration for him. Now, Justine,
yes.
You have a relationship with one of our episodes.
Absolutely.
How is Janet? Janet Sami, Dignified Movements.
Janet is wonderful. She is an amazing woman. I'd been in the disability sector for quite a while before I met Jeanette, and I got burnt by a previous company, so much so that I was actually thinking about leaving the sector. And then I met Jeanette, and she asked me to come and join her at Dignified, and having met her, I couldn't not. She's just awesome.
Yeah. How has Dignified Movements moved on? For our listeners, Jeanette was the 70-plus-year-old lady who's supposed to be retired but got so motivated looking after her beautiful uncle and her aunt that she decided to open up $1 million business, and it's going crazy.
Yep.
The last I heard. How's it been going recently? I'd love an update.
Yeah, we're continuing to expand. In fact, one of the reasons why I was a little bit late today was because I was off signing up another new a client this morning who has really struggled to find a high quality service provider. So we're looking at providing the supports for her. But we're growing and building, and we're expanding the team. I've now got my third support manager on.
Wow.
And Jeanette's currently looking through some business connections at expanding into Singapore. So she's got some meetings up there later in the month.
Now, I said 70.
Early in the month.
I said 70. She's older than 70.
She
not that it
turned
matters.
71
We don't
this
discuss
year.
these.
70,
That's right,
she was 71 in her birthday this year.
Yeah. How amazing.
She shames me with regards to her energy.
I'm looking at you now, Justine, and I'm looking at I'm going to say a fulfilled face.
I love my job.
Well, that's what I'm alluding to. So I'm imagining that in the process of being in Dignified Movement and being in the environment that I know that Jeanette Sami invokes, what she creates, and you with her, I've no doubt that you're a beautiful 2IC partner in crime with her. How does that environment ignite your love for people? I think you've got it innately, and we're going to learn that you have. We know that. But it appears to me that you love what you do. You look as though you've got a love for people, but I think you're at your top of your game at the moment, the top of your loving game at the moment. Am I speaking some truth here?
Absolutely. We all have good days and bad days. And certainly in this, anybody who knows the disability sector knows that you definitely have good days and bad days. There's days that you wish you hadn't got out of bed. However, it's the good days that keep you going. One of the things that I've implemented since being with Dignified is in all of our team meetings, so it doesn't matter whether it's a frontline team meeting, a client team meeting, or even an executive team meeting, the very first thing on the agenda is our goals or wins for the week, month, whatever the period of time is. Because we need to focus on and remember why we do the job. Because it's very easy to get caught up in this hasn't happened, that hasn't happened, the bed hasn't turned up, the continence aids aren't there, the client's upset again, the family want to change, things go wrong.
Sure.
Regularly. So it's very easy to get caught. Staff don't turn up.
Yeah.
It's very easy to get caught up in the downward spiral of that sort of stuff. So to remember why we do this job, and it can be as little as today they went outside for the first time in 2 weeks because they were feeling great and sat in the garden for half an hour and enjoyed the sun. That can be a win for a client.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, going to the top of the Q1 or anything big, going down doing iFly or going on the latest roller coaster. It can be as simple as putting their feet in the seat.
Yeah. Why do you do the job? What's your why?
My why.
Why do you choose this place of work and not something that offers you 3 days a week and you can be home more? Why?
It's for that reason. It's being able to make a difference. It's being able to so when I first started out in the sector, I found I was naturally had a natural affinity to help people become the best versions of themselves. Yeah. So one of the best things that anybody ever did to me in the sector was, family members or other staff or management saying to me, "Oh, you won't get them to do that. There's no way in the world that client will ever get in the car and go on an outing." I go, "Really?" Best thing to say to me, "You can't do that," because then I've got to go and prove that I can. Yep. So, and what I found was that just by being really positive and taking a positive tack and being about the person and guiding them and helping them, I did. There was one client in mind in particular who had travelled in a van because she had to step up and she wouldn't use the hoist at the back to travel on in a wheelchair because she felt unsafe. So she had really limited access to the community. Yeah. And for 4 years she hadn't travelled in a van. And when I said, "Well, we need to get her in the van," everybody looked at me and went, "There's no way that's ever going to happen. Everybody's tried." And I went, "Yeah, okay, fine." It took me about 3 months.
Yeah.
She was travelling in the back of the van. Yeah.
I can see you doing that. I wouldn't want to be the one that offers you a challenge. Neville, I haven't forgotten you over there, mate.
I'm 100% enthralled by this woman. She's been the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life, and for all of those reasons. Yeah. Because she took me on as a special project as well, I think. But I got involved with people helping people with disability a little bit when she started the sector a few years ago.
Yeah,
had some incredible stories amongst that.
The companies that I worked with got a sort of a double package when they got me. Because if something needed to be done in the house and it was going to cost too much to get, like the cupboard needed to be, or a door needed to be rehung, or a cupboard needed to be modified, I'd just get Neville to come in and do it for me.
But I've spoken to him prior to the podcast today, and he's as passionate about it all as you are. Mm-hmm. Like, he's got tremendous energy and passion for it. But let's just stick with Justine just for a little while.
Absolutely. I have.
But I'd like you to comment, because you're an observer to dignified. There, I used the term then. I even shortened the name of the company or the business from Dignified Movement to Dignified. Mm-hmm. You're an observer of Dignified. I'd love you to comment, please, as a closer observer of Justine and her work, and Janet and the environment and the business that they're creating down there. What do you see that's inspiring for you? What's absolutely beautiful in all that you observe going on down there at Dignified?
It's one of the only businesses that I have ever experienced who actually say what they do. As someone who's been involved in businesses and coaching businesses and consulting with people, I have always noted people have got mission statements and they've got lots of principles and goals and things that they like to espouse as part of the culture. And it's very rare in my experience that culture or the principles are followed.
Yeah.
One thing I have noticed about Dignified is that it follows from the top, and compulsorily through the or gravitational effect, if you like. It trickles down through because of the principles that Justine's just observed or told you about. What are the wins? What are the things? But that people-centric concept is genuine. And I've seen it happen in so many different places in my previous careers where people say things and don't do them, and unfortunately people have been abused, for instance, and abuses are breakdowns of systems that allow people to take advantage of somebody else.
Sure.
And this is something I would find incredible if it, in the true sense of the word, if it ever happened at Dignified, because there is such a huge attention to the rights, but most importantly, the desires of the client.
Yeah.
And it's about the business fitting in with the client rather than the client fitting in with the service that they will provide.
Yeah. I'm hearing so many of those principles without me ever seeing, the dot point exactly what they are. But I just heard you use the phrase people-centric. I don't think the word's been used, but I think it's been alluded to. There is a real sense of servitude. Not subservitude. It's a real. I want to add value. There is
absolutely.
I am here to add value to you. Please tell me how I can add value to you. Are there other principles, Justine, that as Neville says, are made fully alive in your business, and you just love that they are alive because they're not only valuable to the business, but they're also valuable to the employees, to the client. Maybe they're valuable to our lives.
And I think that the feedback that I get most of the time from the staff, even none of us are perfect and we make mistakes. And one of our philosophies is that there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. Where the concern comes in is what you do with the mistake, or the challenge comes in is what you do with that mistake. So we're very open, honest and transparent. And if we do make a mistake, we use it and we learn from it. And we also accept responsibility. So when things go wrong, even if we haven't had a hand in what's gone wrong, we still accept responsibility insofar as what we can do to make a difference so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So we had an example of that would be a client recently that we've got some challenges with around how we support them, and there was a shift that we couldn't fill. And we had a conversation with the person and explained to them our situation, offered them alternatives. They decided that they could cope on their own, no problem, on that particular night. And then due to pain and a whole host of other things, they decided to be upset about it the following day. So I went and had a conversation with them, and I came back and I spoke to the support manager for that client, and I said, they respond much better in person. So from now on, if we have information to deliver that might not be palatable or might not be the best of information, because sometimes it happens, we need to do that in person rather than by email, phone, or in writing. So she only lives down the road, so jump in the car and go to. So it's about, we weren't responsible for her being, like, it wasn't our fault, or we weren't to blame.
Yeah.
But we were still responsible for her being upset. So what can we do to stop or to alleviate that for the future?
It sounds to me as if the support person inadvertently could make a mistake.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the team is really, really happy to take on then the responsibility of finding solution.
Absolutely.
Of finding the recovery, of finding how to move it forward. So no one person has got the finger pointed at them. They must feel tremendous connectedness within the team.
Yep. I had to have a conversation one time with a staff member because she had made multiple mistakes, and so Jeanette talks about in orientation that her concern is what you do with a mistake, and that you don't hide it and you tell the truth, and that we can work through it. So the mistake came to light. I brought the staff member in, and obviously because of past experience, she was very nervous about that situation. And then I applied the philosophy. So tell me what happened. How did that happen? Why did you do it? Do you think that it was appropriate? How can we make sure that doesn't happen again? Can we learn from this and move forward? And at the end of the conversation, she was actually grateful. She said, thank you. So she was coming in for a difficult conversation and walked away grateful for the way the conversation went.
But my guess is that's because the leadership of that conversation led with profound openness.
Absolutely.
Profound transparency. No finger pointing in it.
No judgment.
Just no judgment, wanting to move it forward. And when that happens, 9 times out of 10, please correct me if I'm not seeing it rightly, but mostly that invites the other person to do the same. And they too are then approaching it without judgment, without protectionism. Oh, we're here together to find solution. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's that's the philosophy we're building, and that's the culture we're building within the business.
Yeah.
And we are certainly the people that are working within the business. Our support workers are out there when they run into other support workers that are unhappy at their companies. They're saying, come across. So we're getting some really great staff coming across at the moment that are approaching us that want to work with us, which is fabulous. And so we are sort of starting to get to a point where we're starting to pick and choose the staff that we get on board and who we're going to, so we can pick the creme de la creme.
Of course, we're talking about Janet's business, Dignified Movements, although I think it's as much yours in terms of leadership as it is Janette's. So I'm sure she wouldn't mind me saying that. But the business of your home life, and dear listeners, this is why we're here. We're here because you're about to hear an incredible story of, I think, although I think I'm going to be corrected too, sacrifice, compromise, servitude. In Justine and Neville, we have two partners. We have partners who take on into their household the fostering of children.
Correct.
I'm going to stop there right now and just ask you, Neville, could you please describe what happens in your household? Who lives in your household? What's happening in your household? Because something remarkable is happening. I'd love our listeners to know about it.
Well, 3.5 years ago, we have taken on 4 children whose...
Did you say 4?
4.
Then
it was they were 6 to 13 at that stage. They're a sibling group, and Justin and I have been doing respite foster caring for 2 or 3 years before that, which meant every second weekend we'd have 1, 2, 3 kids that had come around, or occasionally emergency placements when someone was sick or on holidays as a carer, and we'd take their kids for that period of time. And that changed because of COVID and a whole bunch of other things. But when these lovely little humans came into our life, I found out there was 99 children under 10 in residential care in southeast Queensland. There was no room at the inn. The government could not provide placements for these kids except to scatter them to the 4 winds, and maybe for days, weeks, perhaps potentially months, be floating around from place to place, totally displaced. Justine and I had a long discussion about it because we have businesses and work and things to run, and provided we got the support, we said, okay, we'll try it for a week. So 3.5 years later, here we are.
So your entree was respite care.
Yes.
For children. That was for a weekend.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you discovered that because there was no room at the inn, the 4 children, for example, that you currently care for, they could have been scattered to siblings broken up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Taken to different homes, 4 different homes as a possibility.
It wasn't even to go to homes because there was no positions available with foster carers. Like in southeast Queensland, or in Queensland, it's 11,500 children in care.
Wow.
It might be worth at this point just explaining the different what Neville's talking about. So what he's talking about, you've got in-home placements, so that's with a family, and that can be a two-person family, it can be a single-parent family, it can be grandparents, it can
Kinship
be all sorts of. So at home with the family is one type of foster care. The other type of placements that kids in care go to is what's called residential care.
Yeah.
And in residential care, that's basically a house where you've got a roster of support workers or youth workers that come through. So you might have someone in the house from 8 till 2, then someone in the house from 2 till 10, they sleep over, and then someone else come back. So there's no consistency. They're youth workers. They're on a rotating roster. And so there's no opportunity to really build a relationship or a connection. And at that, as Neville was saying, at that time, there was something like, there was almost 100 kids under 11. So that's not counting the kids over the age of 11.
Yeah.
That's the kids under 11 that were living in residential units as young as 4. Now, 4-year-old children were living in these homes where there wasn't a mum and a dad or any type of parent. It was just youth workers coming in on a rotating roster, and that's still the case. So it's really difficult, and sometimes you've got to wonder whether or not that's actually a better option than staying in the unpleasant home life.
So you took on the four siblings, brothers and sisters, four sisters?
Three girls and a boy.
3 girls and a boy. And you thought you'd trial it.
Well, we only ever did it for a week, so we were very clear, Bernie, that when we signed up,
we're very clear on our boundaries.
We were very clear that we were only going to do weekend respite care because, we were older and we worked full time and we had lots of pressures in our life, and we thought we could give back that way. And when these kids came, they came for a week, and that was it. We actually packed them up on the Monday morning. We sent them off and said goodbye. But when we found out that they were being shipped off, they lived at Pimpama originally, and we're at Upper Coomera, and they were going to the high school or the schools in the Pimpama area. And the only place they could put them was Mango Hill, so all the way over the other side of the Brisbane River. Then they were going to have to ferry them back and forth to school every day.
Now, that's one of the things.
And split them up.
In the law, as applies to foster caring, when kids first come into care, the system is there to try and obviously help the children, and taking them out of schools and sending them somewhere else is just so disruptive. So the principle is that the kids stay in school where they are being schooled.
Yeah, that makes sense.
However, what didn't make sense is an hour and a half before school and an hour and a half after school, the kids would be driving in a car with a youth worker to the north side of Brisbane.
Yeah.
If they could get a spot. And it was highly unlikely that there was more than 2 of them going to be staying together.
Yeah.
So you've got a complete fragmentation of the sibling group. And we looked at each other, and I remember us having a talk about that. And I thought, they were initially, I must admit, I thought we were being trying to get convinced because it was easier because we were closer. But when I found out the true numbers, which we've just been through, and I said to Juz, we cannot not do this. How can you turn your back on 4 kids?
Yeah, this is remarkable.
So they came back in the afternoon with their bags and unpacked them again.
And then you make a monstrous decision.
Yes.
What was the decision?
To be honest, it was a no-brainer. Justine and I evaluate things a bit weirdly, hence we're one of the weirdos that come on your show. But we have a principle that life, the universe, provides us with opportunities. And if you've got the resources, if you've got the time, and if you've got the desire, then just do it.
You got to stop there, young man. Because what I personally am finding very fascinating is I can't believe for one moment this was in the plan.
No.
5 years ago, when I turned 60, I could not possibly imagine me being the father of 4 young children.
Amazing.
At my age.
Amazing. So you speak to me now, please, about the incredible surprise that you personally have received. And I'm talking about the personal impact upon you as a human being in opening up this surprise package of 4 children. It wasn't in the plan. It wasn't part of the future. It wasn't the way you were supposed to, enter into the third and last chapter of your life, for goodness sake.
I'm only halfway through, Bernie. Give me a break. Give me a break.
I want you, the impact upon you, please, elaborate.
Oh, heaps of fun. It's massive fun, and it's massively challenging, and it's massively rewarding.
Elaborate. What are the rewards? For you.
I have had a kid who was on the spectrum who couldn't connect his brain with his feet to ride a bicycle.
Yeah.
Yet through all the training and things that I've done in my journey, I found a way of talking to him about it and his massive frustration, but then taught him how to have the wind blowing in his face.
Yeah.
And watching a kid learn to ride and watching his grandmother who came to pick him up crying because they hadn't been able to provide that little tiny school for however he was at the 7 or 8 year old. You see the look and the change, and that's made a massive change in that kid's life. Yeah. That's just one. Yeah. We've seen so many kids who have just seen a different way of looking at life. Life doesn't have to be hard and tragic and difficult and abusive and loud and noisy and people yelling all the time. You can come into our house and it's quiet and the television's not always on, and the kids, I've got the 2 youngest ones at the moment, they've decided to write their own books. So when I left them this morning, they were sitting there writing books about their own little characters that they've developed, and you see that peace and safety and imagination and all of these things coming out. And when we have a system at night where we were talking earlier about happiness, for instance, before we started the podcast, but gratitude is such an important thing that people need to embrace, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And Justine and I tend to share that view. And every night, instead of having fights or arguments around tables and what have you, we sit down as a family and we have a meal together and the television's turned off, and there are 4 things that come up. You have to find 3 things that happened today for which you have gratitude, and everybody goes around the table and names 3 things that they were grateful for. And we've recently introduced 1 act of kindness that you have given to somebody in the community.
Are
today.
they all willing participators in this discussion?
Well, willing's perhaps not the right word. Oh, look, yes, ultimately they all do. It becomes part of routine, but that's also important about training the brain, because they're looking for gratitude and they're looking for kindness, not looking for bad things and fear and terror, which is what they have been dealing with.
Yeah, Neville, as I listen to you speak, it occurs to me, and you correct me if I'm not on the money here, it occurs to me, I don't think there's any way in the world you would have done this without Justine.
Not a chance in Hades. This woman is incredible, and she has taught me so much.
Well, now we're getting to the impact on you, because it's not just the taking of the 4 children in and you being a catalyst for some of their beautiful outcomes and their beautiful experiences that they may never have had. You mentioned the wind in their face as they rode a bike. But the whole environment, of course, shouldn't be discussed without Justine
of course.
In the household. So speak to us, please, about the impact on you of that entire environment, the feeling of family, the feeling of partnership with Justine. Is this an environment which creates life? Does it create love? What does it create for you?
Everything.
Wow, what an answer that is, man.
What
an answer that is, man.
But it is, I don't get buried in servitude to people, but I enjoy serving others.
Yeah.
Our relationship's a bit different to most people, where Justine's one tending to be the breadwinner in recent times, and certainly I'm the prime carer of the children.
You weren't expecting that one, mate, were you?
Ain't that the truth? But we have a relationship that works for us, and we've had to adapt and change over the last 10 years, 11 years we've been together, and it's been a process of adaptation and change and discomfort at times too, certainly. But I love this woman with all my heart. I could not imagine my life without it.
Yeah.
And that flows into everything else in life. Yeah. I am totally content about with who I'm sharing my life with, but I share my life. I don't take life from her, and she doesn't take life from me. Yeah. We are very much about energy, and we're not particularly religious in the sense of barracking for a particular religious belief, but spirituality, absolutely. Yeah. And the energy that the universe provides us is exactly what we put out to it.
Yeah. Cut to the chase, Justine. Mm-hmm. You're hearing all this. You must be some woman, darling. Dear people, this is not an interruption to the podcast. It is a beautiful invitation for you to join a journey with Bernie, April 2024 in Nepal, to experience Kathmandu, Kagandra Vocational School for 550 disabled children, and of course, the enormous, the magnificent Himalayas. The spirit of Nepal will invade your soul, the peace and the calm of the people. It's not something you can just get anywhere. You will learn so much from your experiences around Kathmandu, and of course, that mighty adventure, that wonderful, glorious trek to the magnificent Himalayas, where you will have a first-hand encounter with Sagarmatha, Mother Goddess herself, Mount Everest. Dear people, this is unforgettable. This is an experience that will invade every fibre of your body. It is not possible to return as the same person that left. +61 412 982 444. Text me, dear people. Text me on that number, and I will have an information kit to you. Your private invitation to join us in April 2024. Nepal is calling you. When you say you've both been on this journey of self-development, let's just call it learning, growing, evolving as human beings. Mm-hmm. Just give us a book or two. In all that you've done. Like in the last podcast or recent podcasts, I've been promoting. A couple of people have been talking about meditation. I say, you got to have a crack at Vipassana, meditation, the 10-day silent retreat. Now, I'm sure that you too have had experience. You've read books. Sometimes some of those books, they just stand out for you. You would say, please read this book. Give us one of the learnings, one of the books, one of the experiences that you've had and you thought, oh, wow, that was profound.
I have two really profound books. And it was early on, a lot of stuff. It was in my early 30s, late 20s, and I was struggling with my family relationships and putting them into perspective, and step parents and a whole host of things. And I was given a book, or Rebecca recommended a book called Families and How to Survive Them, written by John Cleese, and he's someone Skinner, he's a psychologist. Yeah. After 3 failed marriages, John Cleese realised that maybe he was a part of the problem. Got some help and wrote these books. And the thing, at that stage of life, I blamed my father for a lot of what I perceived to be problems in my life. It was all his fault. If my father had been nicer to me, if my father hadn't been so strict, if my father hadn't done this, if I'd been brought up differently, then I wouldn't be blah, blah, blah. I was in a very strong blame game situation in my late 20s. So there was one line in that book that said, parents do the best they can with the skills and knowledge they have at the time. And that one line created this epiphany for me that all of a sudden all of that blame, it was overnight, disappeared and dissipated, and I realised at that point I'm an adult now. I'm responsible for my life. And it was a massive shift in my relationship with my father. It was crazy, insane.
So I gather then there was more acceptance of just who your dad was rather than an evaluation as to whether his behaviour was appropriate or inappropriate.
Who I am now is a result of me being responsible for me, not what other people do to me. I'm in charge of my life.
Hey, you said a second book.
The other book was The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh,
so
love it.
I was I'd got myself into a financial pickle at a certain point in my life, and the book wouldn't have made sense to me except for the fact that I was in such a financial pickle, and the simplicity of how to manage money and get ahead in life. Out of that book, don't spend more than you earn. I mean, it sounds really dumb. But I always thought, that's okay, I can have it today and I'll pay it off. I can afford to pay it off. And that was my philosophy until I read that book. When Neville and I moved to Queensland, we came with practically nothing. And then I just said to Neville one day, that's it, we're going to buy a house. And 3 years later, we had a deposit.
Wow.
From nothing.
Nev, you got a book or you got an experience?
So many, but one book, I was profoundly depressed in the early 90s. One of the reasons why I went on a bit of a personal development journey, but a book that I found hugely valuable, it was The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. A beautifully written book, simple, and when as someone was clinically depressed, as diagnosed as such, reading things that are simple is about all you can absorb. And that's a book that's beautifully written, simple. It's chicken soup type of book with a lovely, kind story. And that calmed me a lot.
Right.
Families and How to Survive Them, I actually read that too back in those sorts of days. But John Cleese and Robin Nevin did series on cognitive behavioural therapy and things like that, which was hilarious, but I followed a lot of those types of therapies, and that helped me get on the pathway to getting out of depressive illness. It was a book by Sean Acor, which we were talking about before. The Happiness Project. And that was it's more about workplaces and how to apply it into workplaces. But again, a great book. And The Art of Not Giving a...
Oh, yeah, by him.
I've just extraordinarily bold and well researched. And most people who know me know that I'm fairly direct about most things. And I quite enjoyed the series of books.
I enjoyed the second half of that book more than I enjoyed the first half. I thought he was so dedicated to saying the word fuck so many times that I actually thought, oh my God, what are you on about, mate? But I thought in the second half of the book where he actually got to the point where he said, by the way, that the greatest gift you can actually give to anybody out there is to be looking at self, maximising self, becoming the most best, beautiful, ugly, gutsy, vulnerable, wonderful person you can be, and focus on that journey, because in becoming that person and maximising yourself, that is the greatest gift you can give to people.
Absolutely.
You know, so don't give a fuck about too many other things out there. Just look inside yourself to maximise yourself, because ultimately that is the greatest gift. I thought that was a really profound message from that book, you know. Hey, what I'm enjoying about this discussion is because I haven't lost track that you've actually accepted these 4 children into your home. But what we've got now is we've actually got 2 people who may have inadvertently prepared themselves for such an enormous assignment because you've done the work. And you may not have realised how much work was going to be required to take these 4 children into your home. But Justine, there would be so many of our listeners out there tuning in to what you're talking about, and I can feel them asking. Give them some tips. Now, give them some tips on what? You must have learned so much about connecting with children, fostering the value of children, enhancing their esteem. I want you to come up with a couple each. That is 2 tips, Justine. 2 tips, Neville. They've got to be different. I want 4 between you. And not the usual, because you can say the obvious things to parents, but you've learnt so much, and you would say, here are 4 tips that you just know they tend to work. And we all know that children are different, but they tend to work with most. Give us a couple of tips.
For me, it's not just a tip. It's arm yourself with as much knowledge as possible. Whatever training's available, knowing and learning. You know, getting trauma-informed training, getting positive behaviour support training, and following all of that sort of stuff. Because that's where you're going to make a difference.
But you're going to have to stop there, because for parents listening here, they don't have these children on board. They have their own children on board. But you are therefore saying, arm yourself with learning about how to be a parent.
Absolutely.
Wow, you said that quickly.
We, as I said, you know, I've been a parent before, and I thought I did a pretty good job. In fact, I thought I was a pretty awesome parent until I realised that perhaps, I still had a lot of skills to learn.
Where did you arm yourself, Bud? What did you actually do to learn how to be a better parent, apart from through experience?
Books.
Wow, okay.
When you become a foster carer, the organisation that you foster through will run all different sorts of training.
Yeah.
They have therapeutic, they have behaviour support training, they have trauma-informed training. The trauma-informed stuff, again, has become a buzzword, which I'm not big on buzzwords, but everything's all about trauma-informed care these days.
Yeah.
Trauma-informed care is just being caring and considerate and tolerant and understanding that the behaviours are not deliberately focused at you, but because they haven't developed because of the trauma that they've experienced. So it's about being you've just got to be tolerant and recognise I can remember when I first heard about positive behaviour support, because I was a parent, originally a parent who believed in smacking, and and my daughter absolutely got smacked. And when the positive behaviour support training came around, I can remember saying to people and even think to myself, there's nothing wrong with smacking. This positive behaviour is all just hairy-fairy, lovey-dovey stuff. It doesn't work. But then I learned about it and actually did the training, and I started using it, and I realised that it's way more impactful. Kids that are punished through smacking or removal of, rights or whatever, but when the consequence of an action is punishment, they just learn to be smarter or cleverer or lie more, or they find ways, because they don't want to get punished. So they find ways to not be punished, to go forward. When you use positive behaviour support, so you're essentially ignoring, there's still natural consequences for poor behaviour. So when behaviour has injured someone or damaged something, there's a natural consequence for that. You'll lose, an item that's been broken or whatever. But when you focus on the positive behaviour support and you build quality of life and you recognise that all behaviour is a form of communication, and you treat any behavior. So if someone's playing up or misbehaving or behaving in a way that you don't like, they're trying to communicate something to you. So if you listen to the communication rather than look at punishing the behavior, and you do it in a positive way, and you find different ways of getting the same needs met but in a positive way rather than a negative way, the impact is far more profound. And they're not seeking to hide from you or to lie to not get in trouble, because they're no longer in trouble. They're about growing and being more positive in their communication.
You got just a single sentence to describe positive behaviour support. I want our listeners to fully understand what you're talking about there, but it's a single sentence. Nail it for us.
A single sentence for positive behaviour support is probably identifying that all behaviour is a form of communication.
Yeah.
Listen to what they're saying.
Beautiful.
Don't react to the behaviour.
Elaborate.
So you listen to the message. So if I had a client years ago that all of staff would complain that she'd come home from her day program and she'd be in a foul mood. She'd slam doors. She'd upset everybody. Her behaviour was atrocious, and she doesn't fit in the house. We need to move her on. Blah blah blah. And I gone, hold on a minute. I've just done this positive behaviour training. So, she has this attention-seeking behaviour. So I banned the term attention-seeking behaviour in the house, and I started looking at it from a positive behaviour framework. So what I did is, the first time I went to the house, I got there and she got home from her day program. So I introduced myself to her and we sat down and we spent 10 or 15 minutes debriefing her day. So she told me all about her day, what was going on, what book she was reading. And at that point I said to her, listen, I'm busy. I need to finish this. Yeah. You've got that book there. Why don't you go and read that for a little while, and I'll come and see you before I go. No behaviours that night.
Yeah, wow.
So in one session, I was able to identify what she was communicating is value me when I walk in the door. Let me debrief my day. Don't ignore me. Don't be cooking the dinner. Don't talk to everybody else. Give me 10 minutes. And once I implemented that, bang, all of a sudden this child that was uncontrollable and we could, with a disability we couldn't manage, became one of the nicest kids in the house. That's all it took.
Mind you, I'm smiling. I think everyone could benefit from that when they walk into the house. Beautiful, great description.
That's how simple it is. What she was communicating with that behaviour is, give me 5 minutes of your time. Yeah. Make me the focus of your time when I get home. That's what she was saying, but she didn't know how to say that. Yeah. So she did it with behaviour.
Cut to the chase, Nev. Give us a tip. Give us a tip on parents listening to this podcast here on how they can connect beautifully, how they can add more value to their children, how they can help their children develop greater esteem, worth and value.
Respond.
Elaborate.
Similarly with Justine, I've in my previous careers I've interviewed some pretty dangerous and people who not particularly thinking the same way as everybody else.
Because you were a private investigator.
Indeed.
Yeah, wow.
I can't remember where I got the comment from, but it was, you can't hate someone whose story you know. And I have interpreted that over the years, and certainly getting to know lots of people, mainly professionally in the early stages, but I apply that to everybody and everything these days. Yeah. So get to know the story.
Gotcha.
Get to know what the circumstances are. And when we talk about fostering, our kids are in foster care for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's usually something that's dysfunctional on several levels.
Yeah.
Understand the story.
Yeah.
You start to understand what might be influencing the patterns that have been created in that child.
Yeah.
If you understand the patterns, you might not like the behaviour, but the behaviour is a result of something else.
Yeah, I get it.
Similarly to what Justine has just described, where positive behaviour support, you recognise the person, recognise the behaviour for what it is, but don't buy into the behaviour. You're not a bad person because the behaviour is antisocial. You are a person reacting to whatever the stimulus is.
Yeah.
So if you know the story, makes it really easy, because if I know you've been abused and I know, for instance, you would be familiar with the concept of love languages, which Director Gary Chapman has spoken to for years. If you're a physical, you like physical touch, and you're a child who's been beaten, that is going to be more amplified by the fact that you enjoy physical touch. And if you raise your hand to a child who's physical touch and tactile, whatever you do in that way is going to be amplified. So you don't provide a threat. And it's happened numerous times with different kids that we've had where they may be strong physical touch, but I know they've been physically beaten.
Yeah.
So I don't put my arm around them or give them a hug, because I will give them a hug. But I invite that in if they want to.
Rather than imposing it.
Exactly.
Yeah. What a beautiful message. Know someone's story so that you can understand their behaviour. Yeah. But I suppose I'm thinking too, the way that you said that is like knowing their entire story and knowing most of their life story. But I suppose it's equally important in a day. Know the story of the day so that you can understand the afternoon and the evening behaviour. You were referring to that before.
We have that as kids at the end of school term.
Yeah.
End of term 3 has just happened.
Yeah.
And the kids are tired and they are ticked off and they are grumpy and short-tempered. And you understand that.
Know their
and
story.
say, well, I know. Yeah. And walking up to a child and saying, I imagine that you're feeling really tired and you just wait for the holidays. Am I right?
It's a joy to hear these little quips that you're offering us as if the child was here. Like just listening to you then, Neville, it's as if there was a child here and you're actually rehearsing what you would say.
Oh, we are constantly rehearsing it, I can tell you.
Yeah. Now, Justine, give us something different, because I said 2 each, because that's 1 each, okay? So I want another piece of advice or guidance to parents listening to this on how to lift the value and the worth and the esteem and the feeling of self-love of our children.
I think also identify, we've got 4 kids at the moment, and you couldn't get 4 more different kids. For kids that have grown up in the same environment with the same, 3 of the same parents, and you need to truly be individual in your approach for each. Don't be the same. You've got to be fair, but don't be the same. One of the oldest loves to spend time with me, and we can, and she values that.
Yeah.
And it being more girly, and the second one likes to be sporty and active.
Yeah.
The third one likes to be quiet and read. So they've all got different needs. So realise where their values are and spend time with them in their valuable space.
Mm-hmm. Nev, do you know the name? Oh, sorry. No, my fault, because I assumed you wouldn't know the name of an English cricket captain, so I do apologise, Justine. If I mentioned to both of you the name Mike Brealey. Yes, no?
Yes.
You do remember?
Yeah.
You do. Averaged about 28 with the bat. As an opening batsman of a test side, that doesn't last. You don't last for too long. But one of the great English cricket captains, had a record, I'm making it up now, 32 test victories out of 44 tests as an English test cricket captain.
He was very successful,
Something like that, yeah. And I was once asked by a radio interviewer, hey, now, Mike, you didn't actually set the house on fire with the bat. But wow, what an English cricket captain you were. What was your secret to captaining England? And his reply went something like, well, I never captained England. Yeah, they said, what? You were captain of England for 42 tests. No. I was the captain of 11 different individuals. Mm-hmm. And he said, I can assure you the way that I managed Ian Botham was very different to the way that I managed Bob Willis or David Gower. Mm-hmm. And the inference was that part of his secret of being a great leader was to know the individual and to know how he had to connect with the hearts of those different individuals. And every individual was different. I hear you saying
and
that.
Kids, absolutely, kids are the same.
Parents and kids are exactly the same thing.
Yep.
Why am I thinking of Kal Gibran, the prophet? Your children are not your children, for they live in the house of tomorrow. Be like the archer. Take an arrow from the quiver and send them forth into the land of tomorrow, a land which you may never visit.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Beautiful.
The Prophets, a wonderful book.
That was perhaps one of the very first that I read as a young buck that really had a firm impression upon me. I tell you what's having a firm impression is my enhanced imagination as to who you two are. Like, no, remarkable, really, when you think about it. There you are, Justine. You're working with people with disability. I'm assuming the elderly, if I've also understood correctly. You're giving so much to them. Okay, it's part of your paid work proposition, but I don't think that is the prime driver. Almost get the feeling you wouldn't perhaps do it all for nothing, but it's lovely that you're rewarded for it. But geez, you get so much passion and energy and life force, and then you come home and you got a man there who's just absolutely adores you. And you know it. God, you must be good.
Grr, baby.
And together, you there's a dedication to each other's growth, and ongoing development and evolvement as beings. And part of the execution of all that is the beautiful action that you give to 4 children who must be blessed to have both of you in their lives.
I'm glad you think so.
A lot
I
of
really appreciate that.
Yeah. A lot of people say that,
must be.
but we get just as much back from them as what we give.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's no such thing. There was, I can remember years ago, I think it might have even been the ex-president. There's no selflessness in giving.
Yeah.
There's always a payback.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily why you do it, but there is always a payback.
Are you talking about Donald Trump?
No, it was it was the other one. It was Bill Clinton.
Oh, right.
I'm sure it was Bill Clinton. I'm sure that
I
wrote a
honestly
book,
don't know.
something or other about
I can't remember Trumpy ever saying that.
No, there is no such thing as selflessness when it comes to giving.
Yeah.
Because there's a payback, and just having these 4 beautiful kids to love and to be loved by. Yeah. Particularly the littlest, he's still only little, so he'll have bad dreams and, come and jump into bed with us, and he just loves to feel safe in that environment. Yeah. And it's, we actually went and bought a king-size bed so we could sleep still.
Amazing.
But yeah, just having these extra little people to love and to be loved by.
Yeah. How does Neville make you a better person?
By giving me the space to be who I truly am.
Wow.
And loving me.
Wow. I regard that as one of the great acts of love. In my limited experiences of what love is, it is the ability to give the other the space to be themselves and not to ask them to be the person that they need you to be. Yeah.
But I think that by doing that, you are what they need.
Yeah, yeah.
You become because it's a give and take. It comes back.
Well, they get the greatest gift, isn't it? We were talking about that book before, because you actually get the best of Justine. Yeah, yeah. Hey, we got to wrap up, guys.
Really?
Been a beautiful journey. Thank you. Last question. Justine, what is love? After all your experiences, my dear, what is love to you?
For me, I am love. And if I'm not, then I can't give it or have it with anybody else.
Yeah. So if you are loved, we know that there's so much more behind that sentiment. What stops you from being loved? You can say, well, not much. I think that's what Neville would say about you. Not so long ago, I attended a night. It was a meditative night, a Buddhist night, and we had to go around to all strangers. There would have been 100 of us in the room, and we just had to look each other in the eye. We're talking about strangers here, and we had to sing the words, and the words were, "I see the light in you. You see the light in me. Namaste." Namaste. Namaste, the Nepalese or the Sanskrit word that means I see the heart in you, you know. And it was amazing. You do that for 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes with a whole group of strangers. It is incredible what you start to feel and what you start to see in the eyes of the receiver.
Yeah. And the energy in the room just lifts.
It did.
And it releases the burden of anything negative. You can release it.
Yeah. Neville, I'm an instinctive person, so I reckon she's given you the opportunity to feel that core.
Oh,
that loving core.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah?
She is one of God's greatest creations. She's just a beautiful person.
What is love? What have you discovered is love?
Well, I'm nowhere near that level of brilliance. But to me, love's about being totally, utterly unconditional.
Elaborate, please.
If you walk around in life, and we all judge things, and we place conditions on things.
Yeah.
So we avoid comments like, good boy, good girl. It's great job.
Yeah.
And if you're not placing a condition on the individual, then they are allowed to express themselves, allowed to express their true selves.
Yeah.
And Justine is an amazing person.
Yeah.
There's things that sometimes I might disagree with, although for the life of me I can't think of any. But
do you want me to remind you of a few?
She'll remind me of plenty.
Yeah.
But there's no judgment.
I get it.
And no conditions upon what we do or say with each other, and that extends to anybody else.
Beautiful state to get to, isn't it? To be in that state, but almost divine. You know, to be totally unconditional every day, every moment. Like, I hear the term unconditional love and buy into it as much as what I just heard described then. But to be that every moment, like, wow. I would think that I've arrived had I ever felt that on a continuous basis. Justine?
It's definitely how you get the best out of people in general, is to love them. Because once you start placing conditions, you know, I'll love you and I'll love you if. It's not true love.
Yeah, as soon as you say, I'll reward you for whatever behaviour, that's actually placing a condition on a behaviour, and that's at the simplest level. When you talk about the depth of connection between two souls, or whatever you tend to believe in, that science agrees that energy just changes shape and form and doesn't dissipate. I believe that science and spirituality work perfectly well together.
Yeah, they can. Yeah.
So it's
and more too, hey. More and more they're finding how they can work together. Yeah.
But love is infinite.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had many discussions with many kids over the years in particular that love is not something that you have to compete for.
Yeah.
Because I love you doesn't mean I love you any less. And the same goes with all our relationships in life. But love is infinite, as energy is infinite.
Yeah.
And so there's plenty to splash around people. Go and suck the marrow out of life, as our good friend Robin Williams said.
Yeah.
And enjoy every little moment that you can.
Yeah. I tell you what's not irrelevant is the value of this discussion. Geez, it's been beautiful. Have you enjoyed it?
Very much so.
Yeah, it's been just a great exploration of, two people's journeys. But in your case, it's also a great exploration of the journey of the us, the us being Justine and Neville, and who you've become in the process. And it is a podcast about love. And so there is so much to love in this podcast. It's your journey, it's your story, it's in awe and admiration for what you've chosen to do in offering life to these 4 beautiful children. I have really, really enjoyed watching and learning about who both of you have become with and through your experiences, but with and through each other. I think there's been a great message. As I was driving down this morning, I wasn't looking for that message. I wasn't aware that was going to arise. What has this discussion meant for you?
It's been it's again one of those things. It's really easy to get caught up in the day to day, and to be able to look at and remember and to value what we've got. Because sometimes, you can get caught up in the humdrum and you forget.
And not realise the value that you're bringing, but not only to the 4 children, but also what about the thousands of listeners on this podcast are going to hear this too. And what about ultimately the value that you bring to each other? Joy for you, Neville?
It's actually strangely reaffirming. Actually,
beautiful, mate. I love that.
I came in with an open heart and an open mind into this process. I didn't really give a lot of thought about it because I didn't want to overthink it.
Yeah.
And I just have reaffirmed how much we're on the same page about so many things.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful that we've had the opportunity to tell a little bit of our story, which may inspire other people to take on the opportunities to perhaps care for people in their own community wherever they are in the world. And pass on some of the joy and the fun and the enlightenment that we've had through what can be, some people say it's really difficult. And the simple fact is it can either be difficult or not. It's one of those Yoda moment choices, and we choose it not to be difficult. We just choose it to rise to the challenge.
But you rise to the challenge together, don't you?
Absolutely.
And together you make that a little easier. Neville, what should not be lost too, I think it is absolutely remarkable, and Justine, I hope you don't mind me focusing on Neville, but mate, for you to open up the package at 60 years of age and say, this maybe was not part of the plan, but to take it all on as you have done, like wow! But how much easier with Justine at your side.
I couldn't do it without.
This has been a story of love, folks, in so many different dimensions. And I hope that you've really, really enjoyed all the lessons that Justine Baker and Neville Stone have given to this episode. And this is an episode of
A Journey
with Bernie.
We haven't had that ending before.
We obviously didn't rehearse that.
Thank you, dear people, and thank you, dear listeners.
Thank you.
We love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Well, dear listeners, what did you think of that? Personally, I absolutely loved it. Now, what did I love about it? I just love that every story of our guest just lends itself for us identifying more actions and strategies, routines, disciplines on how you and I can become a more loving human being, one that can generate greater inner happiness within ourselves. Why? Let's bring meaning, greater meaning to our humble and beautiful lives. Now, I need you to spread the love with me. Are you in it with me? because all you have to do is please press the follow button. What about subscriber? I need you to share these with your good friends and family, and I need your feedback, because I'm looking you in the eyes and I'm saying I am dedicated to taking this podcast to be absolutely world class. Why? I just want more people to embrace this beautiful game called life. Why not? Unless you believe in reincarnation, we're only getting one chance. Let's maximize it. Let's get on with the journey of life. Embrace it, enjoy it. Oh, and just remember this.